Cool.
How you guys?
Everyone.
Hello.
Give everyone a couple minutes to get in.
Dang. We got a flash flood warning from now until 1 a.m.
That's nice. It's always good to have unnecessary amounts of rain.
Yeah, I saw a map of Missouri today on like MoDOT, and it was like
Yeah.
all of the major highways are closed.
Yeah, Fayette is just completely flooded in.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Can't get to or out of Fayette right now very easily. They called I think Howard County called a state of emergency.
Oh wow.
Blessings be to Fayette. Hope you guys are safe if you're down there.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Just want to remark a little bit on our recent experience with Juneteenth here in Kansas City before we get into some things with the minor feelings tonight. Very successful event. Thank you guys who all came and supported us. It meant a lot. We got a lot done and we had a great show. Looking forward to the next few events that we have coming up, and we'll be alerting you guys on what that is and promoting that all over our socials and our pages. Just thank you for the continued support for you guys to continue to see the value in what we're doing and coming out and being present and also attending these lives and these events and things. So thank you. It was a great experience. We hope to have an even better and bigger experience next year.
Cool. Well, do we want to go ahead and dive into
minor feelings?
So we're going to go ahead and touch on the last 4 chapters and just wrap it up. And so that includes Bad English and Education, Portrait of an Artist, and The Indebted. And we're not necessarily going to go through them in order. We're just going to kind of talk about the concepts that are on all 4 of them.
Yeah.
One of the things that she kept bringing up was about gentrification, and kind of explaining, that these areas that were, historically Korean or, belonging to Asian Americans became really valuable to white, I don't want to call them white patrons, but like white citizens wanting to embark on those areas, have access to those areas, and what were once considered low or not ideal became ideal because of white people entering the community and wanting a piece of it. And so I think about when she's talking about K-Town, thinking about ethnic enclaves and how important they are to community and how people develop a sense of culture and awareness and ideology and also identity in those communities. And I definitely can relate with feeling recently here in Kansas City, there has been an increase in gentrification in urban community. Areas that white people didn't want any access to now want access to because of the resources that are so close to those communities. And I think of gentrification as like the worst thing that can happen to a community. Yeah, it can bring wealth, it can bring value, it can bring resources, but it's also all of that comes at the expense of people and community and identity. And these communities get torn apart and are displaced and are forced out. These people are forced out of homes they've lived in for 50, 60 years. So hearing her talk about that is very cross-cultural for me because it's something I could easily relate to. And being I'm very terrified of what it means to not have a Black community as a physical space and not just this metaphorical thing that we talk about. So when she talks about that happening to K-Town, you definitely can feel a sense of that loss in your own experiences as a person of color, to see gentrification happening in my own community with my own, even my parents, people. The idea of someone asking if they want to sell their home scares me, because it's like, if they don't give it up, will they be forced out? Will my aunt be forced out? Will my family just be forced to leave? And no one ever talks about how damaging gentrification is to community. So for her to bring that up is very, it's very real to me. That was a real experience that she was having that I have as well. And it's emotional because we think of homes as just these places, right? But for people of color, these were the only places for a long time that they were accepted without having to go through such red tape, and in our experience, redlining to get to these places. The only times that you would be allowed to rent or to own were in these spaces that the rest of the general society said, well, this is the ghetto, this is the low end of the totem pole, this is nothingness. And now those same white people come knocking on your door begging, for you to sell your house because they want to be closer to downtown. I don't know, and it really, to me, takes all of this, because we know, like with redlining and those practices that have led to gentrification now and into the cultural practices in our society around housing and development. There's moments where you actually feel as a community that you are worthless, that your home is worthless, that the community you live in is just shitty. But then to have white people fighting so hard for it makes me go, well, is the property shitty, or is just like you've been calling it that for so long, and it's like, but now you want this shitty ass property, and so tell me what it is. Is my home only disvalued or undervalued because I'm living in it, or is there something specifically wrong with this land or this home? Is this place? So I don't know. It's just, for me, it's representative, and this specific chapter is representative of how white people can manipulate the system so well in their favor to get what they want, and the rules that you thought were rules just don't apply anymore when they want something, and that bothered me.
Yeah, and I think I mean, I can't speak to my experience because I'm not a minority or a person of color, but I can speak to my experience as a person who lives in Chicago and has watched several neighborhoods get gentrified. And I think it comes from a point of these neighborhoods have a really unique and vibrant culture that white people see and say, I want to be a part of that. But then they come in, and with them they bring, Starbucks and Dunkin', and they push out that culture, and they kind of, she talked about how like white supremacy likes to pancake things and flatten them into one, and that's what happens in these neighborhoods is the culture gets to get pancaked, and then it becomes completely gentrified, and that culture is absent, and then they move on to the next neighborhood that has culture. And I've seen that happen to several neighborhoods here in Chicago. It started in Uptown, and then Logan Square and Wicker Park and Pilsen's starting to be gentrified, and it is like, it's hard to watch that because these neighborhoods are so cool and they're so vibrant and they're so full of culture, and then they just get kind of transformed into, South Loop.
I mean, I'm not familiar with all the different, Chicago child got a whole lot of stuff going on. So I was like, I know some neighborhoods, well. But I definitely, when she says pancaked, it just becomes very homogenous. It's like, this is one tone, it's monotone, and to a point where culture doesn't exist there. It's just, it is just a Starbucks, it's a Dunkin' Donuts, it's a Whole Foods, those. It's like we can name the stores that are landmarks of gentrification, and it becomes really sad, but it's just erasure too, because now this community that did live there has no place to go. And it can literally mean the separation of family. And I don't think people understand that entirely. Forcing, one of the biggest travesties that happened here in Kansas City was on 27th and Prospect, where they had decided, one year they had decided they were going to build a police department. And they wanted the police department to be a presence in the community because of the crime. And it was, the crime was significant, not going to lie about that. But did you need this full football amount of yard space, a football field, stadium yard space for a small police department that you put on the corner of it? And to me, they had actually asked people to leave their homes. They said, we're taking your home, we're just going to accommodate it and make it into space for this huge police department that we're getting ready to build. And they build a police department, and the amount of land that is left that is just grass used to be people's homes that were paid off, that had been in the family for generations. It was grandma's house, that kind of, and it's very it feels like an ethnic cleansing. It's, it's getting rid of what we own and getting rid of what we hold dear to us. This is some people that was their family's first ability to even buy a home, and you took that. You took someone's inheritance, which is just, I don't know. It just makes me scream, "Run me my motherfucking reparations!" Because you just took my inheritance. Like, where is my money? Because what now? Your grandma has nothing to give your mom. Your mom can't pass something down to you. And what we all know about these communities and these homes that are owned by these individuals is that it's a form of wealth. Having a home is wealth. It's standing money. So to not have that passed down, you just got rid of someone's wealth. You demolished an entire community's wealth. So gentrification is not just about development, it's about erasure and a savage, hostile takeover that is very low key and small. And then it just grows and grows into this thing that you don't even recognize the certain blocks that you live on or you used to live. And that is my spiel on gentrification.
No, I completely agree with everything you said. And I don't know if people who follow us and watch these, who live out in like rural Missouri would quite understand what gentrification is. But I hope that some of the people we have following us in Kansas City, St. Louis, and Chicago can kind of understand that conversation a little better.
I think it's funny that we used to mention these bigger cities. I think that's actually where most of gentrification is happening, is in these.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That's where it's like so apparent and you can see it so easily. It's not so much in these rural communities. I don't think it happens as extreme or as quickly. But in these large cities, it's a problem. It's, if you go down to Pilsen in Chicago right now, there are flyers. There's like chalk drawings on the sidewalks that say gentrification sucks or stop gentrification. It's a fight that the community has to have.
And it almost makes you really hate the development of your city. I knew as soon as we won that World Series in 2015, and then of course, over a year ago, winning, the Super Bowl, I was like, damn, they're about to come. They're coming in droves. Now is real bad. It's like, it's like, please stop coming to this city. Like, leave us alone. We're just small, big town people. Just moving right along. What's next, guys?
Micah, you had something that you were talking about.
I was really just thinking about, like, it is kind of the trend of the rural moving to urban centers, and because of all the different historical practices that the government has used to basically create those ghettos, and create them into their own area that is kind of less wealthy. It became an ability or a place that was very easy for people who were moving to that area to see and just take over.
Yeah, what they call it is opportunity zoning. That's a term I've heard. I mean, and it sounds good on the outside, right? It's like, we're going to give corporations an opportunity to come in and develop your community and put wealth into your community and build up your investments. If you own a home, now your community has a Starbucks, so now your home is worth 3 times as much. It sounds good. It sounds great. But opportunity zoning is just it's vulturous. It's preying on a community for their lack of resources, and you give and then the fact that they get tax write-offs for doing so, coming in, acquiring a piece of land that was deemed just an eyesore, and they build it up into some kitsch brewery that no one needs in the community, and they get a tax write-off for it, or they get they don't have to pay as much taxes up front. They literally, I sent you guys on our message board. I was like, they literally just had to stop a hotel from being built next to a really fancy drugstore that's been here called Cats. And one of my associates, I don't know if she's watching this, but Wilson Vance, shout out to her. She's a part of this attendance association that was like, no, we're going to call and we're going to email, we're going to write and say, we do not want this luxury 1,000 plus for 1 bedroom apartment complex here, because it's just stealing from low income individuals who cannot afford to live in their own communities and making it worse for them. In Kansas City, the rent spike right now is just horrific, and people have, you think that it wouldn't be following a pandemic, but it is. It's very severe. And they were able to stop that development. And she's like, just seeing her post, like, we actually was able to keep the development from going forward. I was just like, oh my God, that's awesome. Because you never hear a small people winning those those big fights against corporations and industry. It's impossible because you don't have the resources. So to see that they were successful made me feel like we could stop this. We just have to be willing to work hard enough to make it happen. And for me, when we were forming SUFE, gentrification and home development and home ownership was really my battle with urban communities and people who are marginalized, who don't have access to home loans and who can acquire property to build wealth. So to see that this fight is I guess fightable, or you can go into it and there could be some hope there, really is inspiring. And shout out to Wilson Vance, one of my Pirate alumni that I used to go to school with and do theater with. She's really out doing some cool work in the community in Kansas City. So shout out to her.
Very cool.
Yeah. So Mike, you had something you were talking about the book before we started. Do you want to?
What was that?
Something about the riots that were mentioned.
Well, yeah, no. She mentioned the LA riots, the '92 riots, and how the media really overplayed the tension between the Korean and Black community there. And reading this and hearing about it was pretty interesting to me, because I remember watching the docuseries from CNN about the 90s, and when they mentioned the LA riots, that is definitely the narrative that they went for. That was definitely the feel that they were giving, and showing over and over the Korean store owners with their guns, battling the rioters. And that was like the narrative that they were going for. It became less about the police violence and anything about Rodney King, and it just became this but also the Koreans and Black people all had a feud. And it was interesting to read this and have her explaining that, and me being like, oh yeah, no, I've definitely been fed that narrative, because that's what I thought of. That's almost what I instinctively thought of.
Yeah, and for people at home, that was in one of the earlier chapters, right, where she mentioned that, talking about how white supremacy kind of pits minorities against each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then, of course, people in the white community feed on that, and then we can then be both looked at as like dangerous or really volatile without looking at the surrounding circumstances of what creates these issues with minority communities, within minority communities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's basically the idea of all your uncles quoting black on black violence
Mm-hmm.
instantly without having any idea of what they're even saying, you know.
I hate the term black on black violence. It's such a weird term, considering that most violence happens within one's community and culturally. We only fight the people that are close to us. I'm not going all the way to St. Louis to fight anybody. Like, I can just fight my neighbor,
Right.
Rodney across the street.
Right.
And so it's just so if we never have the term white on white violence is never used. It's just violence. So
Yep.
the way that white supremacy has worked into our vernacular ways to discriminate against minority communities is just in itself like unbelievably ridiculous.
Yeah, how ingrained it is in a lot of our society.
And people feed into it. I mean, like black people feed into it. It's like we are told something from the white community and we ourselves go with it because the dominant community determines what's real and what isn't.
Yep. History is written by the victors.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is a nice segue into what I wanted to talk about, which was I really wanted to focus on the last story because I think I got the most out of that one, The Indebted. And I think that this one was pretty powerful for me, talking about all of the scenarios that she knows of where Asian Americans were made to feel like they don't belong or like they owe a debt for being here to white people and to capitalism. Maybe that's why I got a lot out of this, because she also kind of went for capitalism as well.
Yes, go for it.
And talking, the title is The Indebted, and the way that this story ends and the last sentence of the book is "We were always here," and I think she repeats that a couple times in the story, talking about times where she's been made to feel like, oh, these Asians are everywhere now. Oh, they're all over Orange County. That was a quote from the book, and someone told her that. And she's just like, we've always been here. I'm an American. I was born in America. I've always been here. And she even like kind of toyed with the idea of like imagining if she got somehow just transported back to South Korea and what that life would be like for her and how she just doesn't fit because that's not, she hadn't been back there since I think the 80s, and that's not who she is. That's not her family that she's brought up now. She's an American and she belongs here just as much as every other American. But how white supremacy makes minorities feel like they owe a debt for existing. I thought that was a pretty powerful narrative.
It is. And I'm going to just go ahead and say as a minority, we don't owe America shit. Like I'm going to say it as a black woman, we don't owe, you owe us. That's what you owe. You owe debts. You owe reparations. I'm going to keep saying it because you didn't build shit. You didn't do shit. You came here and you needed everybody to help you, from Native Americans all the way down to like Asian Americans. You know, and you have people here who were enslaved to build your buildings. There's Asians who built your railroads. Like it's everything. So like there is nothing left to be paid. Instead, you owe for all the things that you didn't pay for. So no minority owes you anything. And I actually understand what she's saying, and I totally 100% get where she's coming from. But that's part of the issue is the more that we allow white supremacy to tell us that we owe something, the more it believes that we do. And the more control it thinks it has over minority communities. Like black people get told all the time, you need to go back to Africa. My question, my answer, my rebuttal was since you know so much, which part? Which part of Africa should I go to? Because Africa's not a country, it is a continent. So which part of the continent did your forefathers steal me from? Yeah. And then it gets real uncomfortable after you say that. It's like, because they don't know. They don't know. It amazes me how many, specifically racist, white people don't know anything about the transatlantic slave trade. They have no clue of what that even is. And so telling someone who is minority to go back to where they came from when you don't even know where you stole them from, or you don't know anything about their culture, their heritage as to how they got here, it's just funny to me. And it just goes to show the ignorance of, where did you come from? You're not indigenous to this land. Where did your people hail from? You can always go back to Europe, where you hail from, at the Caucasus Mountains.
Right.
We could go there. But it's like no one ever, like the more we allow white supremacy to exist and to make itself feel like it is America more than any of us are, the more problematic it is. So like we have to be willing to call it out. My issue here with this is that, yes, those are real feelings that she has. They're valid because I've had them, but we have to stand strong in what makes us American. Sometimes, and I know this is the thing, like for Black people, and I wonder if it's a thing for Asian Americans too. Like you get so disgusted with this country that you go, oh my God, I'm Black. Don't call me African American. I am blackity, black. Don't call me nothing that got American in it. But when I'm in another country and I'm on a cruise, I'm visiting, I'm traveling, I am so proud to be an American. I say very loud, like, oh, I'm American. This accent, Missouri made this accent. This accent is indigenous to Missouri. And it's like, I'm very proud to be an American, but I get so tired of feeling like I'm not one. And so in this country, sometimes you have to act like, it's embarrassing to be here. Look at how we are living. Look at this squalor that we are in. Like we are literally fighting over who gets to be American, as we are all native to this land. We were born here. My birth certificate don't say nothing about Africa. I was born at Truman Medical Center in Kansas City, Missouri, where the corn grows wild.
Yeah, and I think that's what this last story does a really good job of capturing, is that idea that even though white supremacy makes minorities feel like they owe a debt for their existence, for being an American, they don't. Like Asians have always been here. They're part of America. They're the foundation of this country. Mm-hmm. And so that's why one of the reasons I really like this story, but I also really like this one line in specific. So the most damaging legacy of the West has been the power to decide who our enemies are, turning us not only against our own people, like North and South Korea, but turning me against myself. And I think that really sits. I mean, it's hard to hear. Of course, like nothing about race relations is easy to hear, but the struggle that she's had as an Asian American, having these feelings, these minor feelings, I think that really captures it, is that this system of white supremacy and the most damaging legacy that it has is turning people against themselves and making minorities feel like they owe a debt for existence, and gaslighting minorities into believe that they need to sit quiet and shut up and do their job. I think that was just, I would say, the thesis of this book, kind of, in this last chapter.
Yeah.
It's all very real. I hate that she calls it minor feelings now, because as we're progressing through this, it's like, I get it, the play on minority, minor, small, I feel small. These are big feelings, and like they're related to, they do create a war inside yourself. We embody white supremacy every day as minorities. We embody it. Even the way we police ourselves, the way we police each other. If a person who is Black isn't doing something that is characteristically something we feel that white people will accept, we tear that down in each other. Like recently, with Black women, there's been this bonnet brigade. And I don't know if y'all know what a bonnet is, but you put your hair in it at night to protect your hair, whatever, and having Black people themselves call other Black women out about the bonnets that they wear in public, saying that's just not, respectable. And we get into this respectability politics, and, you want to carry yourself a certain way. But who told us that we wanted to carry ourselves a certain way? White culture did. White culture said you can't come out the house looking like this. White culture tells us that we can't wear our hair a certain way. White culture tells us that this scarf on my hair and these dreads are inappropriate. These locks are inappropriate. So we internalize white supremacy in denial of ourselves and of our own culture just so we can better assimilate and fit in. And I am so grateful now that we're feeling like we don't have to do that as much. And to hell with like white supremacy. I'm gonna talk the way I want to talk. I'm gonna wear my hair the way I want to wear my hair. I'm gonna dress the way I want to dress. My full name is Shamika Renee Pagee, and it's spelled horrendously crazy, and you might not like it, but that's my full name. My hair is not blonde. My skin is dark. It's like we have to establish a sense of pride in ourselves because we were told for so long that we are not beautiful. This is not the standard. This isn't appropriate. So we internalize that for ourselves, and then we go and police other people in our community according to white supremacy values and culture and family. Even the way we do family, we think, oh, well, white people wouldn't do it like this, and it's like, what the hell will what white people do? That's their family. This is our family. I love that. In my culture and also in the Latino culture, there is a reliance on extended family ties. I get that for white people, that's really not a big deal. But my cousins, my brothers and sisters, just extendedly in my auntie's house. My auntie's my second mama. When I was growing up, my auntie could whoop me, and she did a lot of times. She did. My uncles could spank me, and they did a lot of times. And that sense of community is what makes me me and makes me love being Black. And I hope that those experiences what makes her love being Asian. So like we have got to fight white supremacy with every ounce of our being by loving ourselves unconditionally and being who we are unconditionally. So I hate that she calls it minor feelings because this is some big shit, and it needs to be out loud. It needs to be put out loud. It needs to be made into this big thing because it's a big problem and it creates problems for us. And just because things affect us, that doesn't mean it is minor. So
yeah, I'm gonna disagree with you a little bit, Shamika. I like the term minor feelings because it is playing at what white supremacy makes these feelings out to be. They're not, and I think she addresses that they're not minor feelings. They're not small, but she was raised to believe in the culture that she was raised in that these feelings are small and they're insignificant. And I think that's what really this book is about, is coming to terms and starting the process of working through those feelings that she's had her whole life that's just been pushed down and pushed down and pushed down. But yeah, I think I'm just on that small point. I'm just here with you.
I think that me and Cathy, we were to sit down at a round table. I think that it's just cross-culturally we're very different. Even though we're both minority women, generationally makes a difference. I think there are younger generations in the Black community, also the Asian American community, are just really fed up. Like we're just really tired of having, because I think she can more relate to my parents' generation of being like, no, the white people are listening, you're talking. And now you have millennials like, to hell with white people. I don't know if you've ever seen this TikTok video, but it's like how the old Black generation approaches work versus the young millennial generation approaches work. And then the old lady, that Black lady's like, oh no, baby, don't do that. You know how they are. They don't really like us anyway. So, be quiet and don't talk. And then the millennial comes in and he's like, no, see, don't do that because these white people are crazy and they don't like us anyway. They don't like us anyway. They don't like us. And this is like super. And it's like this generation, I'm so proud to be a part of this because it's like we no longer care. And it's like the less that we care, the more oomph this has over our lives. And I'm so glad we no longer care. I'm so glad we're politically changing our ideas of what it means to be free, what it means to have people represent us in politics, not accepting just anything, saying we're willing to pull people out who don't care about us. That was unheard of in older generations in minority communities. It's like you go along to get along. And we just like, I want to thrive. I want to live. I want to have a family. I want to be significant. I want to love myself. You know, I don't want to just go along and get along and keep my head down. I want to walk proud and enthusiastically into my life. And that is unheard of in those generations. So I think me and Cathy may be each other's minority foils. So I'm just like, girl, these ain't no minor feelings. These are big. These are grandiose. We all need to be having these conversations about how we feel. The way I feel is a big deal because it's happening to me. And white people need to care. And if you don't care, you're going to care when I get done talking to you.
Yeah. And I think that the poet that Cathy Park Hong came out with when she decided on the term minor feelings. I think that is like a very like ironic poet kind of way of phrasing that. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it just gets to me because it makes me feel like she thinks her world is small. And I'm like, no, baby, it's big. It's, you know, I don't know. It gives me perceptions I don't like, and because I mirror a lot of what she's saying in my own life, and the way she approaches it. And this is just kind of the conversations we were talking about the author of this work. You know, just it's almost like there's not a bigger sense of pride, and I wish there was more. I mean, I wish that she had more pride for being who she is ethnically, and walking in that, and loving that, and celebrating that. She doesn't feel like she celebrates her ethnicity to me. Like she just doesn't. I mean, like, do you wake up every day and are you proud to be Asian American? Like, are you proud of the yellow tint in your skin? Are you proud of that? Like, you know, I wake up every day and I thank God for being dark in a woman and in this color right here in my style. Like, I thank God for this. Like, do you wake up and I thank God for these nails? Like, this is me. You know, like, do you like yourself? And she makes me question if she likes herself.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying earlier. Is I think that this book is really a journey to get there. It's like the first steps that she took of exploring what it means to be to be an Asian American, and what it means for her to love herself and embrace the parts of herself that she was told not to growing up by white supremacy.
I can accept that. I'll accept that interpretation.
Yeah, that's how I read it. And on that note, I think this is definitely worth a read. So anybody listening, anybody who watched this, I really suggest you pick it up. The book is Minor Feelings, An Asian American Reckoning by Cathy Park Hong. And yeah, I definitely think that this was a good book to read and for us to explore. And I think for some of us, it challenged some of our viewpoints, and for some of us, it kind of opened our eyes to a bigger spectrum of what it means to be a minority in America. I think I personally spent a lot of time looking at what it means historically to be Black in America. You know, we went through the whole history of being Black in America with the Reparations Handbook, and so this was a broader perspective from a different minority about what it's like to be Asian American. I really did appreciate that view.
I think I like that. I like that we were able to read through it because it made me introspectively look at myself, look at my own culture. You know, what ways do we have similar, and what ways I'm just like, girl, this ain't my experience at all. You know, because it's important to do that. A lot of the times, I think for like even white Americans, they think, well, minorities all probably feel the exact same way. And sometimes I think we do. I'm like, oh yeah, I feel like this. But then there's moments that go like, no, it's not quite like that for me. And I'm like, it's not quite like that for me. And, you know, being able to say we have a lot of similarities, but those differences are big as well. And we need to each have our own representation for that reason. That's all I got.
Cool. That's all I got.
I personally, after reading this and hearing her talk about it, I kind of want to go back or look up and read Dictate.
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of interested in that.
Yeah.
Mike,
I kind of wanted to delve into that a little bit.
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit.
What about it?
The book, what it is.
Oh, Dictate. It's by another Korean author, Teresa Kyung Sha, and it's apparently a poetry collection, mostly talking about a bunch of different Korean revolutionaries, and I'm not sure all about it, but she talked about it a lot and made it seem pretty interesting as far as her influences.
Mm-hmm. What I found interesting was how she just highlighted the author's death. I feel like she was trying to go into the segue of talking about the intersectionality between race and sex, and what it means to be like a minority woman, and that specifically an Asian American minority woman. And just talking about that woman's death was really like very humanistic to me, because she was trying to get into this, what it means to be unprotected when you're a minority in general, but to be even more unprotected when you are a woman in a minority too. And I felt like that resonated with me, especially after reparations handbook, where we were going over the countless amount of rapes that Black women were experiencing during the heaviest of the Jim Crow era. And I was just like, yeah, it's just something about, you're unprotected as a minority in general, but there's something also, a greater struggle when sexism comes into play in this form of intersectionality, where something that was already horrific because you are a woman gets even worse for you. So definitely made me want to read that author's work. Mm-hmm. And then for them not to even have any solid details on her death, like a general consensus on how she died, it's almost like it's almost like it never happened.
Yeah.
The way she talked about it, like it didn't matter because it never really even happened. Heavy stuff, you guys, but this is definitely worth the read. Yeah, definitely worth the read.
Yeah, and I think that goes to show that you're just reading one book isn't enough, and that's why we wanted to do this book club, is to expose ourselves to all different types of literature. So maybe we'll do this one soon, the dictate. And there's always more to learn about minority experiences in America, about race relations in America, and the education that you should give yourself should never stop.
Mm-hmm. Never.
All right. Well, with that, I think that's all we really have to say. So if you're interested in this book, go check it out. If you've already read it, feel free to share your thoughts with us, and then stay tuned for more book clubs.
More book club.
And other events.
That will a lot of other events.
We're very excited about.
Very excited.
Cool. Thanks to everyone who joined us.
Bye.
Have a great weekend.
Bye.